All right. Live from St. Augustine. It's Saturday night.
Yeah.
Woo! All right, settle down. You're being too loud, buddy. All right. I appreciate you all coming. We have Paula Hedglon is our main speaker tonight. And we also have Dr. Ernie Panza, who's been practicing for
over 30 years.
Over 30 years. He's saying that to make it sound like he's younger. I've been practicing for 30 years. So I know he's had an incredible life. He's going to share a couple of his stories when we close after Dr. Paula speaks. This past week, I found out that one of my friends and mentors, Dennis Woggon, passed away. So I wanted to start off with a little tribute of Dennis. Dennis graduated from Palmer in the early 70s. He was a patient of Fred Barges in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and he became friends with Dr. Burl Pettibon in the early 70s and was really the main Pettibon instructor for about 25 years. And then in 2000, he founded the CLEAR Scoliosis Institute, which was really a combination of Pettibon with some more scoliosis specific things that he found. He was frustrated with his results in scoliosis cases. And the thing I was most proud about Dennis was, as he developed all these things that would help scoliosis, is he always stood by the fact that the primary cause of scoliosis was the upper cervical subluxation. And he felt like the main cause was birth trauma, causing instability in the upper neck. I was at the University of Washington, St. Louis about 10 years ago, and they had a sign up, and it said, "We're looking for people that have scoliosis that will help us do a study on upper cervical instability and scoliosis." And he's been talking about this for much longer than that. Also, he's been approached by different governments and organizations that are more physical therapy orientated. The Chinese government, different big government social places where they have a lot of scoliosis, okay? And they wanted to take over CLEAR almost like a franchise. But the only thing is, they didn't understand the chiropractic and upper cervical aspect of correcting scoliosis. And so Dennis would not surrender CLEAR to them because they were going to remove the chiropractic part of it. And it's not going to work if the upper cervical subluxation is not corrected. He's been a featured speaker at many upper cervical conferences around the world. And he really got fascinated with the alar ligament. And so if you've ever heard him speak, you learn a lot about the alar ligament. For Burl Pettibon, he wrote the Pettibon Adjusting Manual, which is an incredible manual. Dennis has given me permission to share a PDF of his book. So if anybody wants a copy of it, let me know. And he wanted to share this information and get it out there. And so you can contact me personally if you want a copy. But Pettibon is basically a concept is you have an ideal spinal model, and the closer to that normal model that you are, the healthier you're going to be, or the best chance you have to be healthy is going to happen. So this is a picture of the ligaments of the upper neck, and kind of like your knee, you have these cruciate ligaments, different ligaments at different angles that hold that upper neck in position. And this is the one Dennis used to always talk about, the alar ligament right here. It connects the occiput to C2, to the dens, okay? And if that is out of alignment, you will see a C2 spinous rotation, and you also will commonly see a head tilt when the person looks up. So you can almost be looking at a patient and have them look up like this. If their head goes like that when they look up, they usually have alar ligament damage. If you're looking at a neutral nasium x-ray and you see C2 spinous rotation, usually there's going to be alar ligaments if you follow up and do an alar x-ray, okay? And so when you're doing upper cervical adjustments, like we were talking about with these HIO chiropractors over here doing these toggles, if the person is what we call right alar positive, So if you take the ALR x-ray and the atlas slides to the right, you're not going to adjust them from the left side. You're just going to make that worse. And when I got my digital motion x-ray unit, almost every patient that didn't respond to chiropractic, I saw something on that motion x-ray. Because I think it was Gonstead that talked about the principle of chiropractic. It wasn't the principle that was ever wrong, it was the technique. Meaning, if you're adjusting somebody from the left side and that causes it to dislocate to the right, they're probably not going to get results, right? But if you have a super specific x-ray and it shows you that they need to be adjusted from the right side, they're going to get better results, right? So it wasn't the chiropractic principle, it was the technique in that case. It wasn't the right thing to resolve that person's subluxation. So here's another picture from the front. You can see the ALR going to the dens. And so when the person tips, we'll show you in a second, that bone will just slide like this. And so you're going to want to adjust it from the side that it slides to. There's a bird's eye view. Again, this is the ALR ligament. Now, dentists would do all these funny things at these seminars. One of the things he would do, I should have got some pantyhose, but he would take a pair of pantyhose and put it over his head. And then he would take the legs of the pantyhose and hold them like this. So the pantyhose legs were the alar ligaments. And then he would be showing you, if this one's torn, it's going to go like this. And then, C2 spinous rotation. And it was all about these pantyhose. And the whole time he's talking, he's got this pantyhose over the top of his head. And then he would just get these visuals. And then at one of the recent CLEAR seminars in the last couple of years, he got this picture of these floats. So you ever see like a float that's like a swan? Mm-hmm. So he would look at the one with the swan head is the second cervical or axis, right? And then he'd get another one that didn't have the swan head, and that would be the atlas. And so he would slip it over the top, the atlas over the dens, and then he would be able to show you with this big model of the atlas and axis all these things. He had a lot of fun with it. Mm-hmm. But you'd see him walking into a seminar and he'd have like a float ring with a swan, pantyhose over his head.
That's funny.
But he's just, passionate about this upper cervical spine where he would just dream about this stuff, And patients loved him. I mean, I was at his clinic in Minnesota. My daughter and I spent several weeks there because we both had scoliosis, and over the course of a year, we probably spent like a month and a half there, and he had an apartment in the clinic that you could rent, and so I would be going in as a patient, but then as soon as I was done, I was shadowing him for my CLEAR certification, so we got to spend a lot of time with him and see the passion, but it was unbelievable. He had made this connection with these Mennonites in Canada. So you would meet a lot of these Mennonites, and they were driving like 500 miles to come to the clinic, and they don't use a lot of money. They're kind of like Amish people, and they would be bringing in chickens, and and it was funny. But his connection with people and his love for people was just unbelievable. But it was all about reducing the subluxation to get them healthy, and that's what he was very passionate about. So he was very much a stickler on doing a very detailed x-ray analysis, and he would quote Lord Calvin. And he would have this quote from Lord Calvin that if you couldn't evaluate something in numbers, it didn't have any worth to it. If it's not like your imagination, they're actually going to measure it and look for the results and be very specific. So this is a nasium open mouth x-ray that they use in the Pettibon system. And so when we're in chiropractic school and we think about the alar x-ray, we're thinking about burst fractures and things like that, where we look at the atlas overhanging C2 or there's some kind of dislocation. But there's a subtle way to look at this atlas in the alar view that tells you how to adjust the person. And it tells you how stable their atlas is. And it's a very specific x-ray. So this patient, this is the lateral side of the right side of their lateral mass. This is the lateral side of C2. So when they bend to the right, they have that much overhang. It's a lot. And then when they bend to the left, same thing. They have that much overhang. So they've got a lot of instability. Guess what? This is a girl that had scoliosis prior to puberty. That was one of our patients. It's a huge risk factor if they have this. But as a chiropractor, if you ever have patients that don't respond to an adjustment, take this x-ray. If somebody tells you they've been to another chiropractor, they still have headaches, take this x-ray. If somebody gets a normal diversified adjustment and they throw up, take this x-ray. Because there's a reason why the adjustment's not working. We got to just be more specific and find out what it's all about. Dr. Woggon also developed a special tip from the arthroStim instrument. It's a round ball on the end of the adjusting instrument with a little divot. And so what it was, he would take that and adjust it on C2. And if you go on YouTube with arthroStim, you can look at him adjusting people live with motion x-ray. And he's doing this SDI adjustment on C2 as he takes them through extension, and it helps to put that cervical curve in there as they look up. So as they're exaggerating the curve, he's adjusting them like this, and it helps to put the curve in there. Here's one of our pre and post results looking at some of those things that Dennis taught us. This is that girl with the ALR ligament damage that we were able to help with scoliosis. Now this was a gift of Dennis to me. He would always have these weird things. He would kind of like Dr. Paula, because Paula wanted you to think about the tick. Yeah. So my daughter and I, we still have Paula's atlas here because she got me doing my new patient orientation again. And this is a reminder to tell the story about the upper cervical subluxation. And so Dennis handed this thing out to help to tell the story, right? So the guy was crazy. Like, he would be walking around the hardware store looking at this thing, right? And he's like, oh my God. He's like, Mike, look at this thing. I gotta get that, right? His wife's name's Brenda. Brenda, we gotta get a bunch of these and give them to chiropractors. Why are you gonna do that? Well, Petamon's based on the riding reflex, right? So if the upper cervical spine is out of alignment, it can create this scoliosis, right? And in upper cervical, it's all about the upper and the lower angle. So if the head's out of alignment from C1 and the neck's out of alignment from C1, then the communication from the brain to the body just doesn't happen, right? So Petamon teaches these specific ways to adjust where you get the head balanced on C1, okay? And then you always want to get rid of this lower angle in a scoliosis patient. It's considered the major thing causing scoliosis. So what Petamon talked about was when you correct that lower angle and the person's like this, their eyes are going to make themselves right like that, right? It's like there was an old ICA Jimmy Gregg video where they had these human long spines. Each person was a vertebra, and they had them dancing around, and they would show this happen. It was kind of funny. It was like a dance, but they would have all these people like lined up in a crowd, and he would go adjust, and then you'd see the spine kind of wiggle around, and then they would adjust, and then, and the whole idea is that the brain has this intelligence to do the right thing, but it's only going to do it if there's no interference. If there's interference there, and that's what in medicine they miss with scoliosis. Like if you take an AP x-ray and you measure a curve, that's only part of the story. That's like the end of the story. Right. This is the beginning of the story. And that's what Dennis Woggon was very serious about. And we're really proud of some of these results, and the amount of hours that I spent on the phone going through this program with Dennis is unbelievable. He was just so giving. Like, I mean, I was calling him on every patient at first, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? And he was just, and he was actually getting in trouble from the CLEAR board because he's like, look, we can't be advising these doctors and then people say that they did it because CLEAR told us to do it. He didn't care. He just like, I want to help people. You're going to have to, like, okay, I'm gagged and I'm handcuffed. Now I can't help people. But as soon as he got that gag out, he would say, okay, what can I do to help you? And this guy is another child that we were able to help that had some pretty significant results. And so if these two are below 10, he no longer has scoliosis. So from 27 and 20 to 11 over 10, that's pretty amazing. So we're very grateful for Dennis for those results. And we're going to be having some video testimonials on the CLEAR website honoring Dennis over the next couple months. So if you want to learn more about it, go on the CLEAR Institute website. And now I'm going to see what kind of technology I can do here. I swear I had this going for you, Paula.
There we go.
Okay, there we go. So you just click back and forth from here. You want me to do it and while you talk?
Let's go back to the first picture. Yeah.
All right, and here's Dr. Paula. Without any further ado, all the way down up from Pompano Beach, Deerfield.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
All right, so which one do I press? Okay. All right. So Saturday night, here we are. It's gonna be loosey-goosey. Do you recognize this, Ernie? So this is how I'm gonna start because everyone has a story of how they started in chiropractic. So I have a story, and this is Dr. B.J. Palmer, and that's my great uncle Frank. He went to Palmer and he graduated in 1947. So he's been really the reason why my brother and I became a chiropractor. So that I always have this picture and I look at it because I want to remember that he had a big influence on my uncle, and my uncle did not budge. He was a B.J. Palmer fanatic. And when they were fanatics back there, they did everything. He had buses. He was in New Jersey. He would have buses come from wherever to Trenton to get licensed in chiropractic. And that's our whole family and everybody would be on the bus, and we do it because he believed in chiropractic. So when one person can change the life of everybody's family and everybody, one person in your practice, one patient, one person can change your life. And that's what he did for us. So he's no longer around. He passed on at 87, but he practiced until he was 87 years old. Wow. So he was a toggle man, And I have a great story about that. My brother and I would go up, especially holidays. We'd drive 45 minutes. We would go to his office. He had a home office, and he used a stationary toggle. And my brother and I would pray on the way there that he wouldn't take his watch off. Because if he took his watch off, that means we need an adjustment. And it was like, it was so hard. He was actually bigger than this. He was like 300 and some odd pounds. He'd come on that stationary table and wow, you know, it wouldn't drop. My brother would laugh. When I did it, I would cry. So it was like, it was a constant thing. So we used to pray that we would hold our adjustment before we got there. And like, you know, so that was a big thing. So he's had a big influence on all of us, and he'd come down to Florida and he'd look at my practice and he goes, where's the clamps on for the x-ray, and where's this? Because he's a big toggle man, BJ Palmer. So one of the things is Dr. BJ, he did a lot of stuff with too about the anode, and he helped with the x-ray, but Dr. BJ had a mindset that was tremendous, and you know that, you wrote that whole book. But my grandmother was there, because that's the brother of my uncle, and he took my grandfather there in a wheelchair to Iowa, Palmer, and this is how it started. My grandfather was in a wheelchair because I guess his back or something was out, and they gave him a toggle adjustment, and he stayed there in Iowa, and he became better. And he came back and he would do cartwheels on the beach. Well, my grandmother would see Dr. BJ, and she said, Dr. BJ, it's 110 degrees here. You're wearing a wool suit, a 3-piece with a vest and everything. He goes, Mrs. Rossi, it's all up here. He goes, it's all up here. So that was something that my uncle would tell us about, my grandmother would tell us about Dr. BJ, how much of an influence it made on us. So that's why I'm a chiropractor right here. So basically, that is like a good picture there. And that was back then, it was harder, but there were fanatics, but you didn't have all this outside media with people doing outside in. You knew that chiropractic was you heal from inside out, and it didn't matter what you had. So they would take care of everybody. They would take care of everybody. And he became famous. This is how. One person, right? He found in the newspaper, it was a singer. He was young, very young. He was in his 20s, I think. And he lost his voice. My uncle saw it in the paper, and he says, I'm going to call him up. So he called him up and he said, I want you to come in my clinic free. So he came to the clinic, he received all his adjustments, and he got his voice back. And he was an entertainer. So that's how my uncle became very famous, because he would go and sing, and he would say about Dr. Frank Fasulo. And that's how he became very famous as a chiropractor. So it took one thing, one incident, one listening to your gut to say, innate to say, I need to call this person to help him. And that's what happened. See? It's always something. He had a home office, people were lined up outside. He was across from Seton Hall, New Jersey. They'd be lined up to see him. So that's what I wanted to tell you about my uncle. That's how he became famous. So we're going to the next, this is the wrong way, but nope. Okay, there we go. Dr. Sid Williams. All right, Dr. Sid Singh is a mentor of mine, all right? I went to Life Chiropractic College. He was the president of the college. And what happened was I would go to these seminars called Dynamic Essentials. So he had a way of changing people's mindset. And he helped the chiropractor understand that healing comes from within, but be certainty, with authority. He was that kind of person. You would look at him, and he's one of the reasons why I went to chiropractic school, because I went to, my brother's a chiropractor, and I went to his wife's graduation at Life, and I was there, and I was a teacher at the time. I wasn't even in chiropractic school. And I went up to Dr. Sid, and he shook my hand, and he looked at me and stared at me, and he wouldn't let go of my hand. He goes, when are you coming up to Life? It like went right through me, right here. And I'm like, ooh, I should become a chiropractor. And I was thinking of it on the way home in an airplane, and he had a big influence, because he said, yeah, you're Rossi, you need to be a chiropractor. So I decided to go to chiropractic school. That's how it all started. So that's where I went to DE and everything. So you're gonna see that I was not as strong in faith in the principle of chiropractic back then as much as I would until, nope, wrong. What happened, Michael? We got some other, I'm missing some pictures here.
I think some of them, the format might be off or something.
Okay, we'll keep going. We'll keep going. We'll keep going. These are just patients on. No, that's the way it is. Okay, there. Do you know who this is? Dr. Richard Santo.
Yep.
He was in Jupiter, Florida, but he also is from New Jersey. He was friends with Sigafus, and what happened is he became a very good friend of ours in Jupiter. He would come down to the office and he would watch me and take care of me, but he had a lot of certainty when he spoke. He had a lot of intensity. He was very, very, he would do anything to keep chiropractic alive. And that was, I became really good friends and I really, really admire him. So that's the purpose. He gave me a purpose for chiropractic, purpose, not just to move bones, but a purpose of people changing their lives. And then, I'm gonna keep moving, somehow, there you go. Dr. Sigafus. Okay, passion, funny, passionate. He'd start with this story and then all of a sudden, like a funny story, and then all of a sudden it'd hit you right in the heart. And it would be like so emotional. And he had this passion in chiropractic. He just wanted to see chiropractors and people survive. He wanted them to do better. He wanted to see it alive. So I would have weekly phone calls with him. I became part of his system where we would talk every week about chiropractic, what I was doing, what I should be doing, what I should not be doing, and so forth. He was a big mentor of mine. But that's how we have to be, like with one another, is to help each other, whether the students or whatever, to help each other, to stay on purpose, to have the passion of chiropractic, not to get lost in all the stuff they teach you at school, but to remember the reason why we are a chiropractor, the reason that people are changing their lives and being alive. It's so important. And yeah, it's good. Okay. This family, she started with me when she was 18 months old. Now she has all these people coming in, and she's doing tremendous things. They don't, talk about, it doesn't matter how big you are, you can adjust anybody, right? There you go. That's a good one. But I don't know why they're on here, but these are stories. Okay, this is an open house. And the reason why I'm showing these is not because woe is me or, this is great. This is because sometimes people are afraid to come into your office because they hear things about chiropractic. Oh, I've been to a chiropractor once. Oh, I heard this about chiropractic. So I do these open houses. I used to, I didn't do as much after COVID, and I would get people to come, who would speak. I'd get a speaker, Dr. Santo, Dr. Sigafus, whoever, came down and spoke, and they would talk about chiropractic, period. And we would check people. That's the only way we can reach people, because a lot of times they see other people and they'll come. So I have them come on a Sunday, and they come and we check people and we check them and we see if they need chiropractic care. And that's something that the young people really need to do. They need to get out there. They can't just sit in their office. They just can't. I mean, they can sit in the office and wait, but we have to reach the people out there. And that's what we're here for, to reach the people. So that's our band of brothers right there. See that? Isn't that funny? There's Irene Gold. See her? There's Irene Gold. See her? Neil Cohen. Yeah, a whole bunch of people. Marilyn Shore, Mike. So there's our band of brothers. And that's Peter from Canada. He comes in there too. All right, we don't need to see that one. We don't need to see that one. Okay, what's going on here? Oh, that's my daughter. Our daughter. How these got in there, I don't know, Jay, but they don't have to be there. So those are different pictures. We're missing a few, but that's all right. I'm gonna go back. All right, so I have a story for you. All right, can I turn this off? Oh, by the way, this is Dennis Messina's niece. All right, he's autistic. He's doing great. They moved up to Georgia. He's come a long way with music or whatever, and I just wanted to show you that because you knew Dennis Messina. So there you go. See, aren't you glad that you've seen these pictures? And I'm not gonna go back anymore. That's the whole family. Yeah, that's it. All right, I'm not going back anymore. Things can change in an instant. That was a kids group I had there. The week before COVID, I rode to schools and I had them bring their kids on a school bus trip to the office. We had a little sit down, I had a little orientation for the kids, I had a little handout for the kids. We did the thing like the snake or the ball, about chiropractic, and I had all these kids, and I would have them have a handout to bring to their parents so that they can know what chiropractic's for. And you'd be surprised how many kids are not going to a chiropractor. And you got to start with the parents. So I had a little handout that they had to get the parents sign about chiropractic and what it is. And I did this, these are things that came to me because I used to be a teacher. How many kids do you know are not getting chiropractic care? And the kids can't come by themselves. They have to have the parents. So you have to speak to the parents. So that's part of what we need to do. So we have to start with the students at the school. We have to get them acclimated, say, hey, this is a great rewarding life. I mean, you're seeing people's lives change on a daily basis, and they do. In fact, if you are on purpose and on target, like I was talking about a CA that I hired, and she speaks Spanish. The first day she started, we had this person come in, and I don't speak Spanish. I can get away with it, a little poquito, right? So this person came in, and it was a father of a son, and he wanted a massage. And he said, well, we don't do massage here. We do chiropractic. And he didn't know what chiropractic was. So our CA that spoke Spanish explained to her, because she was a patient before she became an employee, she explained what we do, how we check them, we examine them and see, make sure it's clear. The brain tells the messages to see if it's clear. He says, okay. So he went home and he brought his son, 16-year-old, in that afternoon. He was on a walker. Okay, now listen to this story. You'll appreciate this. He's on a walker, and he came in, and what had happened is he had a car accident, or somebody hit him, broke his femur in September. He's been on a walker since June. He went to so many different doctors, and finally this doctor said, because he wouldn't put his weight on the foot or on the leg, they said to him, it's all in his head. He can do it, he's just afraid to do it. We take an x-ray, reverse curve in his neck. He had a really torque in his lower back, big torque. I have a pre and post that I show with the testimonial. And in 2 months, we retook his x-ray again, back, tremendous amount of change, tremendous, totally straight. And he could walk without a walker. He's 16, and now he could drive and go to school without a walker. How is that in his head? And he was afraid. So this is things that, this guy walked in our office. He was working down the street, speaks Spanish. I had a Spanish girl. He comes in, didn't know anything about chiropractic. They talk him into chiropractic, gets adjusted, and now his life has changed. That's only one person. But every person that you have that comes in that you can talk to about chiropractic can change their life. That's how you have to look at it. One person. One person. So you've done a lot by being one person, by telling your story with the books. All that can change. So what I do is when people come in is, aha, you want one? Sure.
Thank
You want one?
Thank
I have more here. This is the atlas. I don't have any names on it, but I have mine with my name. And what happens is when somebody comes in, I have an atlas axis, and I do in the orientation, and I say to them, okay, and I twist it, and I say, this is a subluxation, all right? How long, and then when you get adjusted and you do it over a period of time, it will hold. How long do you want this whole of the spinal cord open so you get 100% life? How long do you want that? Don't answer me, answer yourself. Forever. So I carry this around, and I have my patients carry it around, because it's not about a pinched nerve, it's about pressure on the brainstem. That's what Sisyphus taught me. Pressure on the brainstem is a lot more detrimental than pinched nerve. So this is the atlas, it's the top bone in the neck, and I give these out to my patients. I have the name on it. I give it out to students. I give it out wherever I go to speak, because it's so important that we remember that the atlas is the most important part of the spinal cord, and that we can continue to do that. So how long do we want to keep that open? Hopefully forever. So I get very passionate about chiropractic because it is my life. It's not what I do. I mean, it is what I do, but it is my life. And I go out of my way sometimes, but he sees them there 24/7, like all the time. If somebody calls, they can reach me whenever, And I want people to understand that it doesn't matter what you have, how old you are, what insurance you have, or no insurance you have, it doesn't matter, but we can take care of people, no matter what, financial ability too. So I start from the day they're born, and I have 100-year-old parties at my office for my patients that turn 100. I do a party for them at 100 years old, and we do that too. So we do more than just chiropractic. We really take care of them as family, and that's what we want. We want family. We want them to be part of it. You know, you want the heart. And when you can give, love, and serve and do from the heart, they know that you are doing the best you can. And they know that they can get better, but they have to stick with it. That's the key. So if they don't stick with it and we don't reach out to people, they're not going to get the right message. You know what they're getting? They're getting outside-in messages. You don't know how many people come in and say, oh, I saw this thing with this machine, and I saw this thing that you do from the outside in, and you do from all this other things. And I say, well, you know what? The most important thing is if your body heals from inside out. And if they can get that concept, and if they can get that, see that you know that you're passionate about chiropractic and life, and that's what we want, and that's what Sigfus, I would be around him. You were saying the same thing, Dr. Ernie, that being around Dr. Sigfus, we would be around him a lot, and we'd get that feeling, you know, and I'd start to cry, because I wasn't crying because I was sad. I was crying because I felt his feeling, and I felt it, and that's what we want to bring back to the office. So if we can bring that back to the students, if we can bring that back to the patients, if we can bring it back to our family of how important this chiropractic thing is, that maybe there'll be more chiropractors. That's my story. And I'm telling you, I love it, because who knows where I would be if it wasn't for my great uncle going to Palmer with BJ Palmer, and then seeing my brother, and he tells his story, and seeing all that. That's how my life went. So 36 years in practice in Florida, but 37 years total. So I've been a chiropractor, and that's what I see. That's my vision. And I hope everyone's vision could be a little bit more, that we can do a little bit more of more of the heart, and a little bit more of educating people about chiropractic. That's what I want.
Fantastic.
Okay, that's my story. So,
All right.
what do you think?
Thank you.
Welcome, Nick.
All right.
Nice
So-
pictures.
Now we're going to bring up a famous speaker in chiropractic, in the chiropractic world, Dr. Ernie Panza. And he wrote a book about the life and times of B.J. Palmer. B.J. Palmer is the son of the founder of chiropractic, D.D. Palmer, and he's considered the developer of chiropractic. And Dr. Panza wrote a book about his life, and he's had a lot of interaction with some great educators in chiropractic, some philosophers, and there's a couple stories he's going to share, because we want to get these stories on video, so they're going to be around forever. Okay, so Dr. Panza, come on up. Yep. He's also the world record holder for 80-year-old over pull-ups. Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, thank you all for being here, all the way to the back of the room there. Hello, and I'm glad you're all here.
Yeah.
Woo!
A noisy crowd here tonight. First of all, one of BJ's famous quotes, and it's a wonderful quote, and it is this: that we never know how deep we'll go, or what we're thinking, what we think will change people's lives in the future. And I don't have it right now, but I had it sitting there thinking of it. Paula was talking about chiropractic, and it came to me, and it'll come back to me. Jay made a comment that I said I was only in practice for 30 years. Well, I was in practice for 30 years, and I'm not trying to hide my age. I'll be 82 next week. And
Wow.
when Jay was talking about what I did on my 79th birthday, I've been a gym rat all of my life, since high school. And for some reason, people are developing different parts of their body. My upper body was developed, and I can do pull-ups. I can do more pull-ups than anyone in any gym I've ever gone to, and I go to the gym several times a day. And the best thing about it is I can't do some of the other things that guys do. My gift from God is doing pull-ups. And because I could do them, and I'm a Vietnam vet, and I go to my meetings in Jacksonville, Florida, and also I go to the meeting in Port Orange, Florida, where I basically now live. And I see these Vietnam veterans, they have nothing going for them. They're on medication, they're all hurting, we're dying. We're the oldest group right now with about, I forget, probably about 80,000 veterans, Vietnam vets, and 68,500 veterans died in the Vietnam War for absolutely nothing. And every day, 22 to 33 veterans kill themselves. And so I looked at this, I said, I gotta do something. Well, what it came up with was, because I can do pull-ups, I decided I would do pull-ups, and I said, I'll do 100 pull-ups in 1 hour, and people can donate to that. It's coming up again this Veterans Day. We're doing it again. This will probably be my last year for doing it. I found another exercise I like, and it's a little easier, but I won't talk about that exercise tonight. But it's pretty cool. My fiance will be married next week, 2 weeks from today, saying she started working out at the gym with me, and she's done a fantastic job. And so back to the pull-ups, what happened was I was going to do 100 pull-ups in 1 hour. And my friend Tony DeLeo, who lives in Jacksonville, he's a Vietnam vet, also a Vietnam vet, he said, I'll do the counting for you. So I did the pull-ups, and I could do 100 pull-ups in 10 minutes. I think my Beck's record is 100 pull-ups in 7.5 minutes.
Ooh.
So I finished the pull-ups in less than 10 minutes, and I looked at Tony and I said, you know, I never tried how many I could do at one time. Why don't we see what let me see what I can do. I had no idea it would be 618. But I did 618 pull-ups in 1 hour on my 79th birthday. And that developed into more and more and more doing pull-ups for different organizations. Paula mentioned that she does parties for people or patients that hit 100 years old. Well, I attended something in Palm Coast about 2 years ago, talking to all the people that were involved in the veterans in Flagler County. And what happened was I talked about doing the pull-ups for them, but nobody seemed to be interested. As I left the building at the Flagler Courthouse, a gentleman followed me out the door, and he said, Dr. Panza, can I talk to you for a minute? I said, yeah. He said, would you do 100 pull-ups for not a Vietnam vet, but a veteran who's turned 100 years old, who's turning 100 years old? And I said, yeah, I'd be glad to do that. So what happened, I said, when is her birthday? And this is Monday night. She said, Wednesday. Wow. I said, Wednesday, okay, we'll do them. I said, so here's what I told them to do. I said, take a card, and everybody that comes to they were going to have a birthday party for her at the VFW at lunchtime on her birthday, Wednesday. Take a card and give a card to everybody that comes to the birthday party. And it was a surprise party for her. And have them write their name, their telephone number, and the amount they'd like to donate to it. I said, when I do the pull-ups, I don't see the money, I don't touch the money. The money goes right to an organization. So once in a while, someone will send me some money, and that goes to the printing of all the information that I put out for them, and I give them all the information that they need. So concept was was a Tuesday morning, I went there, Wednesday morning rather, I went to the gym, I did 100 pull-ups, and I went to, and everything was counted. My friend is another gentleman, he's a retired Army Marine Colonel, and also Tony DeLeo, who counted the 618, it was a Marine also. And they don't like me because I'm Army, but that's okay. We get along great, they're wonderful guys. So the Colonel counted the pull-ups, signed it, a couple people in the gym signed it, the owner of the gym signed it, said that we did it, it's all certified. I brought it, and she came to the party, and I gave it to her, and she was crying. I have a picture of my phone of her, and it doesn't look like 100 years old at all. And about halfway through the party, her son-in-law came up to me and said, how much do we owe you? And I said, for what? And he said, well, she'd made about $700 in this surprise birthday party for her. And I said, well, it's hers. Now, it was funny. She's 100 years old. Her son-in-law, he looked like he was at least my age, 80. It's kind of funny. You know, this guy 80, I'm her son-in-law. So anyway, that's what we do. I didn't mean to go off on that tangent about the polls, but we do it every year. I don't know if I'll do it any more after this year, because in last December, I had a stroke. It was a pretty major stroke, and I came out of it really, really good, and I thank God for that. But it wasn't as easy as it sounds, because I lost my relationship with Sang through that, and we broke up and came back together several times because of my attitude. Because I couldn't do the pull-ups anymore, and that's what I was really doing for the veterans. I got very depressed. I went to the bottom of the pits. I do get chiropractic care almost every week. When I get checked by Dr. Cecil Ashby, who is in also here in Florida in Ormond Beach, and and I did something else, and I don't want to talk about what I did. If you're interested in what I really got, how I really came out of that depression, I went to the bottom of the pit. I could not, and Shane can relate to it, how I was feeling and what was going on, and because I couldn't do anything, and I was so tired I couldn't even get out of bed half the time, and I no energy, no enthusiasm, no nothing. The long story short on all that. However, I did do something, and I do it now, and it does work for me along with chiropractic. So if anybody wants to hear about it, I'd be glad to tell them, because of how it helps Sang and I, and also our relationship. So all of this brings me back to the whole concept of chiropractic. Though we have to have a purpose in life. When I had no purpose in life, and during that 8 months, I just gave up. And it's not like myself to do that, but I couldn't do what I wanted to do. So chiropractic gave me a purpose, and I was asked earlier before the meeting started how I found my way into chiropractic. I was like everybody else. I graduated in chiropractic college in January of 1968, and I was having migraine headaches. I was in the military at the time, stationed at Fort Hood, Texas. A friend of mine who was also from Pittsburgh, where I was from, told me, he says, you can go see a chiropractor for your headaches. And I said, like everybody else, what are those quacks going to do for me? They're not going to be able to help me. He said, no, my uncle's a chiropractor, and he helps people with migraine headaches all the time. He was in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. So as everything happens in our life, the universe has a plan. There are no accidents. Everything happens for a purpose. I was driving home. I lived off post. I was married to my first wife. She was pregnant with our first daughter. I have 5 children. I have 12 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren now. I was married to Mary, and I lived off post, and I was driving home, and there was an accident. There was a detour, and I had to take the detour. And I was going down in the back little alley in Killeen, Texas, and you had to make a right or a left turn, or you'd run into this building. Well, wouldn't you know it, the building had a big sign on it. They said, Dr. Sid Isdell, chiropractor. So I said, I'll try. So I walked in there. I asked the lady at the desk, I'd like to see the doctor. What's your problem? I had migraine headaches. And the first thing he said to me, oh, my son Sid can help you. It was his mother. Well, Sid Isdell became my mentor, my friend, and I've written 26 books, and I think every book, mostly every book is donated to 2 people. I had an aunt whose name was Shirley, and she saved my life, and that's another story that I'll tell at a different time. And Sid Isdell, because he put me in the direction of chiropractic, and he believed in it. And what he believed in, as we were talking about with Dr. Sid, with Dr. Paula, what you believe in, you put out there. And he believed in it so much that I believed in it. And one day, and he also took care of me, my wife, and then Mary had Lisa, our oldest daughter, who happens to be a chiropractor today, for free. Never charged me a dime. So when I got into practice, the first thing I did is I put a box on the wall, and it's called God, Patient, and Chiropractic. GPC stands for God, Patient, and Chiropractic. And people come in and they pay what they can afford. And sometimes you have a good week, and sometimes you don't have such a good week. But we had a major practice. We had a volume practice. We see about 300 people a day. And some of the stories I want to talk about, for instance, is one. We have a lot of great chiropractors who've passed on now. Of course, Reggie Gold, Jim Sigafus, Dr. Sid Williams, Carl Tompkins out of South Carolina, Paul Becker out of South Carolina, great people, K.R. Jones out of South Carolina, a lot of really great people that I had the opportunity to meet and be friends with over the years. And one of the stories is like with Sigafus, and you saw the picture of Sigafus. He's kind of a strange looking character, but his personality was more strange than his look. And Sig always talked the story about the pig story. And then people say, what's a pig story? Well, he embellishes his stories. And we go to, Dr. Paul also mentioned about the Dynamic Essential, which is called DE, which is a chiropractic conference in Atlanta, Georgia, that Sid Williams started. And Sig would always be the banquet speaker, and he would get up and he would tell these fantastic stories. He was very flamboyant, the way he dressed. He was a really crazy dresser. Everybody tried to imitate him. Everybody tried to be like him. Everybody tried to tell the stories, but no one could match up to him. We had a great chiropractor, Reggie Gold, who passed away. His wife, Irene Gold, is still living, and absolutely phenomenal lady. She teaches chiropractic courses for chiropractors taking the state board, helps a lot of chiropractors get through. But Sig was, to me, he was my best friend, and I was his best friend, and we did different things together. One of the things we would do, and I'll tell you the pig story in a minute, I want you to hang on that one, but one of the things that we did is Sig would have a chicken barbecue in Thomasville, Pennsylvania, a town of about 12 people. Now, this town is so little, and he was seeing over 500 patients a day in his office, and people say, "No, that's a lie, he never saw that many." I tell you what, I spent a lot of days in that office with him, and I know how many people he's seen, and he had a box on the wall, and people paid what they could basically afford. When I did the chicken barbecues with him, I was the only guy dumb enough to develop his x-rays. Now, in the old days of chiropractic, we had a closet, and you had a tank that had 2 chemicals in it, and you hand dipped them, and then you pulled them out, and your fingers, after you did enough of it, would turn brown from the chemicals. And I was a guy, and I would be in there all day long. He would have these chicken barbecues, and people would come from all over that part of Pennsylvania. It was free barbecue, and Reggie Gold would usually speak there, and I would speak there, and some other chiropractors would speak there. But I was always stuck in that little closet, and I'd come out after being in the dark for like 3 hours, and my pupils would rise and go, "Was this big?" It'd be so big, I couldn't. The eye, it would almost blind me. And then from that, I decided, well, he had chicken barbecue, so I didn't want to, and I'm a vegetarian, so I didn't want to feed 2 people chicken, and I've been a vegetarian since 1964. So I decided to do spaghetti, since I'm Italian, I did spaghetti dinners. And and the neat thing about this, again, with innate intelligence, B.J. Palmer was riding a train going to West Virginia, because all his patients told him, if you come to West Virginia, well, you can see more patients than any place else. We'll fill your office with patients. He was riding a train to West Virginia, because it didn't have airplanes back then, and some people were on the train, and they were looking at something, and they were looking at BJ and looking at BJ and looking at something in their hand, and BJ looked over the seat, and one guy said to him, "Is this you?" And it was a picture of BJ Palmer, and I had a collection of Palmer's books and pamphlets and everything, and I gave them all away when I retired, but there was a picture of BJ, and the book was, I've looked for it forever, and I could never find this one. It's "A Drop of Ink Makes Millions Think," and it was an ink pot, like the test that they give people. Look at this picture, what do you see on it? And the story about it, one guy says, "Well, I see a lady with no clothes on," and they said, "Okay, what do you see on this picture?" "Well, I see a lady with no top on." "And what do you see on this picture?" "I see a lady with no clothes on." The guy says, "Is that all you ever see, ladies with no clothes on?" He says, "Well, it's not me." He says, "You're the guy showing the dirty pictures." so the concept was that they saw BJ, and this is why I say innate works in strange ways. And for those of you that don't know, innate intelligence is that inner thing. Universal intelligence comes from the universe, basically God. Innate intelligence comes into us. The universal intelligence rather comes into us and goes into innate intelligence of our body. When BJ got off the train, there was a band waiting for him, and a gigantic crowd of people in this little town in West Virginia, and I'll think of the name of it in a moment. But BJ said he had a suitcase adjusting table. It's a portable adjusting table that opens up, and you can fold it up and carry it. And guess where they went? They had a parade across this town, and they went to the Oddfellows building in that little town in West Virginia. Guess where my practice was? In Monroe, Michigan, the Oddfellows building.
Wow.
On the first floor. Guess where we had the spaghetti dinner? On the second floor of the Oddfellows building. And there's some crazy medical doctor, I don't even want to get into that story, but some crazy medical doctor one day ran me off the road, and a big guy, a very large guy, and he said, "I'm going to kill you someday." And I, well, okay, this guy don't like chiropractic or don't like me, I don't know, or both. And anyway, he burnt my office down. And the Oddfellows building went down. And before that, he came in with a hammer actually right after lunch, and there was two police there. It's a long story, but there were two detectives in my office as patients, and one outside, and they saw him come in and they arrested him. He had a hammer. He was going to hit me in the head with it. I mean, the guy really was, well, he was nuts. He went to the Eastern State Hospital quite often as a patient. But when we had the barbecue, the chicken or the spaghetti dinner, Mike Martell's mother was the one who did all the cooking, and of course Mike and his brother Larry are both chiropractors, and I don't know if Joe became a chiropractor. I don't practice anymore. I'm not sure if Joe did, but these three brothers, and the mom would come and cook all this spaghetti for us, and we'd have Sigafus come, and I had to get in his dark room and talk about or develop the x-rays of all these people. He'd take one x-ray, it was a lateral cervical, and it was always free. The barbecue was free, everything was free. We did the same thing, we took x-rays, but he had a much better job when he came to the to my spaghetti dinner than I had. One of the patients, one of my best patients, Jim Miller was his name, he had a radio program on the local radio station in Monroe, Michigan, called Oprah Mike. And he was a patient, his whole family, brothers, sisters, their kids, his mother and father, they're all patients. Well, Jim would set up, and this is like the old days when you did a remote, you really had to bring a lot of equipment. Well, Jim would set this all up, Jim Miller. And Jim Sigafus would get on the air for like an hour screaming and telling and broadcasting as he was a riot, telling stories. And so he told the pig story. Well, the pig story was that one of his patients' wife called and said, "My husband is really sick, you gotta come and see him." And he said, "Well, I can't get there right now." And she said, "No, you gotta come." He said, "Okay, so I'll come out tonight." Well, it was after dark. He said he had a Corvair, which I don't know if he had it or not, but he said the ruts were deeper than his tires on his road. He kept getting stuck in the bottom of the car. He said he pulled up in front of this little house and out in the woods someplace, and he looked on the porch and there was a pig. And he said he was afraid of the pig, and the pig was looking at him, and he was looking at the pig. The pig was looking at him, he was looking at the pig. They said the pig was winning. He didn't want to get out of the car. But finally goes in the house, and the guy is making all kind of noises and coughing and choking. And the wife says to him, "What's wrong with him?" And Jim says, "He's sick." So it was just, and also back then the chiropractors were trying to be like medical doctors, which we're not. And so everybody, and there are certain colleges that teach more of the medical concept of chiropractic, or the outside in instead of inside out, and we believe in above down and inside out. And so he graduated from one of those colleges, and he had a little doctor's bag, and to feel important and make it had stuff in, he put marbles in it, so it would click around when he walked with it. So he went in with a little doctor's bag and checked this guy out. And I mean, he had so many funny stories. He told a story. He would tell a story about he heard about DE, and he was going to go to DE down in Atlanta, Georgia. He lived in Pennsylvania, Freedom, Pennsylvania, and he put his wife, I think it was his mother-in-law, and 6 kids in this Volkswagen bus, and they headed for Atlanta, Georgia. And he said, going down the hills, going to Georgia, the bus would go 100 miles an hour, but going up the hills, people walking could pass it up because it had no power to go up the hill. And also in his bus, he also had a giant dog. He loved animals. He had a dog, so he was just so down to earth. I'll tell you one last story. It's called the Mary story, and he told this all the time. Mary was a fictitious patient that came into him and was sick and said, "What's wrong with me, doctor?" Now you see this here is the base of the skull, or the occiput, and right below it, and Dr. Paula just passed this out, this is the atlas vertebra, which is right here at the base of the skull, and then the second bone of the neck is right here. And Dr. J was talking about showing the pictures up there of the ligament, and he mentioned the transverse process of the dens. Well, that's that bone that sticks up right here in the middle, and that's the only place, and the only 2 bones that have 24 vertebrae in our back, but only 2 have a name. One is the atlas and one is the axis. Well, the axis was the second bone of the neck. And he tells the story that Mary came into him and says, "What's wrong with me?" And he says, "It's the second bone in the neck, Mary." And so she bought that idea. It's out of position, it's pinching a nerve, it's putting pressure on the brain, so whatever he explained to her how then, and this was a long time ago. So anyway, next day she came in and she says, "I'm sick, doctor. What's wrong with me?" He said, "Mary, it's the second bone of the neck." Well, he says this went on for like 2 weeks. Mary kept coming in. "What's wrong with me, doctor? It's the second bone of the neck. It's out of position." And so one day he said he had to see more patients than just Mary, so he called the husband and he said, "Keep Mary home today. I got to see more patients." Every time Mary came in, "What's wrong with me?" "It's the second bone of the neck, Mary." So that was some of the stuff with Sigafoos. And in chiropractic history, you either loved them or you hated them. People. I got to tell you this. His wife Patsy and my wife Mary became like sisters. They were like twins. They were inseparable. And he would spend time with us we had a small farm in Michigan, in Monroe, Michigan. He was in Pennsylvania, in Thomasville, Pennsylvania. And they would get together and do stuff together. But Patsy, one day he and I were speaking in Miami, Florida, and we're standing in the hall. He just got there, or he was there before, and I got there. And we're standing in the hall, and Patsy comes in carrying all these boxes and puts them down and goes back on. And she's carried another one of all these boxes. He's giving stuff away when he talks. And I said to Sig, "Sig, let's go out and help Patsy carry these boxes in." He said, "No, that's what I bring her here for, to carry the boxes in." I said, "Man, too much." Last name. I don't like going to banquets, and I don't like banquet food, but I had to always go to the banquet at DE because he was the banquet speaker. But he was on almost at midnight, because this DE would go to 2, 3 in the morning, and then we'd all go out and get something to eat for breakfast at 6 o'clock in the morning. We'd be up all night. Well, he would be on at midnight just about. So he had 6 kids and my 5 kids, and Mary, my wife, and myself would all go to a Chinese restaurant and would feed all those kids. And then we'd always make it back for his talk at the banquet, and it was a riot. I mean, there was never there's 2 things with Sigafoos. If you listen to Sigafoos, one, you would laugh like crazy and you'd cry, because he had a way to turn a story to make you cry, and he was just an amazing individual. And as I said, you either loved him or you disliked him. I wouldn't say hate him, but you would dislike him, because people thought that he was absolutely crazy out of his mind. They thought he lied because he didn't see all those patients. And as I said, I was there many, many times, and I seen him see over 500 patients a day. And one day we went to lunch, and when we came back from lunch, his parking lot was full. There were people literally standing outside his door. And I said, "Sig, what's going on? What's all these people doing here?" It's like a Wednesday afternoon at lunchtime. He said, "Oh, they're all patients." And we went in, and his office was full of patients, and he's seen over 500 patients a day. He had the largest chiropractic practice that I know, that I ever seen myself in person. I know there have been chiropractors in the early days that seen hundreds of patients also every day. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Awesome. All right, thanks for sharing that.
That was
All right.
fantastic. That was great.
Live from St. Augustine, it's been Saturday night!